Hey guys, and welcome to Faewood. So for the Mythical Markets again this year, I decided to make a pair of wings. Last year I made the fairy wings and it's been my most popular video so far, so I thought it'd be fun to do a pair of dragon wings. So as with my other pair of wings, if you've watched that video, I start with a circle structure that sits in the small of your back, and this is what I use to attach the wings to, and also attach the straps to go over your arms when you do put the wings on. I'm using electrical tape here to connect the wire. I find that to be better than other tapes because it's got some stretch to it and it just works well over wire. Now I had a look at pictures of dragon wings, and this was basically the design I was going for. Unlike my other video, I decided not to draw this one out first, but you could do that. If you've watched my other video, I got a big piece of cardboard and drew the design and then bent the wire around the shapes. This is a much more simple shape of wing, so I just decided to freeform it. But each time I did one side, I'd make sure to cut the next bit of wire for the other side to be the same length and bend it in the same way and everything. Now the wire that I'm using I just got from Bunnings, which is a hardware store in Australia, and it's a fence wire, and I recommend getting a nice thick structural wire for this because you do need it to be quite structural. This type of wing in particular ended up quite heavy, so having a nice thick wire as the base is the best bet. So I continue the wrapping of that tape up further on those two bits of wire so that it goes up and then branches down the different spines of the dragon wing. Each spine I make them a little bit shorter than the last one, so I start the longest piece and then I make them smaller as they come in closer to where they'll sit at my back. And as you can see, each piece of wire, I wrap the wire around the last bit of structure there, and then I use the tape to go over that to add extra strength and to start to develop the shape of the wings. And again with the other side. And now this is the fourth spine, so you can see it's a little bit shorter again. Again, wrapping that around the main, I guess, spine of the wing and letting it bend out. Now it can take a little bit of time just to get the wire bent into the right shape, so just take your time to smooth it out and, you know, manipulate the wire so that it's the right shape that you want for the wings. And then the fifth and final spine, the shortest one there. So once I had this framework done, I added foil. And this was a way to bulk up the wing spines, and it's quite like you can manipulate the shape of this quite easily. So it's really good as a base to things. Now, if I was going to make these wings again, I'd probably use more of the foil than I did. I was trying to make the spines quite thick, and I should have really added a lot more of the foil first, because it's a lot lighter than the other things that I go in to use, which you'll see soon. So I think the foil is really good to get the main bulk of the shape and really thicken things up. It's not too heavy, it's nice and light, so add plenty of foil till you get the thickness, almost the thickness that you want for your wings. So from there I went in with my multi-purpose filler. If you've watched my videos, you've seen me use this before. When I was making the Mystic's Prayer Stick, I used this same filler because it's very sandable and obviously sculptable as well. So the idea was I wanted to add this on so that I could really smooth out the spines of the wings and make them really smooth and manipulate the shape how I wanted. As I mentioned, if I was going to make these again, I would have added more foil because I ended up adding a lot of this multi-purpose filler, and while it's not too heavy in smaller amounts, it ended up quite heavy for the wings, whereas the foil would have been a bit lighter. So just a tip, if you're making these and you're wanting it nice and thick like I've done, add plenty of foil and just use this to smooth out the final shape and not really to add bulk. So I just used a little plastic spatula, and I would definitely recommend using a brush to then smooth it out. It's a lot easier when you do that, and you might need some water just to water it down to smooth certain spots out. And then in the end I started applying it directly with the brush, and I found that method to work really well. It goes on a bit thinner, but it's a much smoother finish and a little bit easier because you don't have to sand it as much. Now I did have to do this in coats, so the applications you're seeing here are multiple coats. I didn't want, anything to sort of get on the table. Well, I made a mess of the table, but I didn't want to put some underneath it and then for it to flatten out by sitting on the table, so I would just do one side at a time pretty much. You could lean part of the wing on something so that you can get underneath the spines and do a bit that way, but realistically you'll probably need to do this in multiple coats. Now, because I know that this has cracked in some spots when it's a movable area, when I've used this same filler, I wanted to put a coating of something over the top, and I did this with a previous project and it worked perfectly. So you could use either material, or what I've used here is tissue paper. I've just torn it in strips and used a PVA glue, and it works really well for just coating everything in a layer so that if cracks form you won't see them. It's pretty strong, so I don't think anything will, it's very strong actually, but it's more just for the aesthetic look, putting this on, and just a bit of added strength because you've got all that glue covering everything as well. So once I'd done one layer, I did go back and put another coat on just to really strengthen it up, particularly around the join areas that might have movement. I wanted to make sure that they were really strong. The beauty of these techniques is that you can make any shape that you like, and you can really bulk it out how you like. So you could, manipulate this shape that I've done here and do it differently for your own wings, and add different aspects to the design as well. Now, because like I said, I had put a bit of bulk into this with the large amount of filler that I used, I wanted to really make sure that the main structure of the wings, where it goes first up and then everything hangs from that first spine. So I added wire around and curled it around and around the structure there and around the harness as well. And it's just going to add that bit of extra structure, making sure that everything does sit correctly and stay really strong. It was just something to make sure of the support in the wings. If you were making lighter wings, then you probably wouldn't need to do this step. It just depends how heavy your wings are. If they do feel like they could use a bit of extra support, then do this step. But if you've made them quite light, quite thin, then you can skip this. So I started from one wing and then around the harness and then back up the other wing, but only on that main spine, not the ones hanging down, because they're the ones that need the most strength, because everything is hanging from those, from that bit of structure. And again, I used my electrical tape just to cover up that wire. Now, I actually ran out of electrical tape, so I just used a little bit more of my glue and my tissue paper to cover up the wire up the top. It's an optional step really. You don't necessarily have to cover up the wire. I just decided to do it. So now I'm actually adding some Glad Wrap, and I'm using a sticky tacky glue, a Boyle's tacky glue there, because it grabs the Glad Wrap really quickly. And I've used a few strips of Glad Wrap to cover up where I'll want the skin between each of the spines, basically. Now, what I would say on reflection is it may be worth looking into using one larger piece of plastic if you can get your hands on, say, maybe a drop sheet plastic or something like that. I liked the idea of the Glad Wrap because it was easy and accessible, but just bear in mind that because of the way Glad Wrap acts, you do get a lot of folds and things in the Glad Wrap. So if you're not concerned about that, then by all means use the Glad Wrap, but if you want a smoother finish to the skin between the spines, then perhaps use a thicker or larger piece of plastic that doesn't crinkle the way Glad Wrap does. The bonus of the glad wrap though was I could then wrap it around the other side of the wing and over the top of the other bit of glad wrap so that it contacted and stuck. So now that I have that, I actually decided to use some latex. So I haven't worked with latex before, this is my first time. I did get an industrial strength type of latex, so this is not for skin, which means it's heavy in ammonia. So if you are using this, definitely use a well ventilated area because it's very strong. I mixed in some ink to start with just to see what that would come out like, and it works out quite well. I did run out of the purple ink, but it did work and gave a nice translucent purple colour. So if that's something that you want to play around with, you certainly could. I did end up painting over mine in the end, and you'll see when we get to that part. But basically I used a litre of latex, and I ended up using the entire litre. And I would say a litre was probably a good amount, because I ended up wanting it nice and thick, and that added more structure and added strength, and it smoothed out some of the glad wrap. I quite liked using this technique. It felt quite skin-like, the latex, and gave a really interesting look to the wings. So you can see each layer is quite thin really, and then I wait for it to dry. It would take a number of hours for it to dry, and you need to wait till it's fully dry before you go in with the next layer. Otherwise you'll find that it won't have a smooth finish. So I did the layers of latex on both sides of the wings to give a nice smooth or smoothish finish. You can see the shapes of the latex don't really cover all of the glad wrap folds and things. That was the only thing that I probably wouldn't use the glad wrap again, just because I think I would have preferred a smoother skin between the spines of the wings. But to help cover that up a little bit, I did paint them, as you can see, with the spray paint here. And when it was opaque, that helped really mask some of the imperfections that the glad wrap had caused with this. The latex was really great though. It made it nice and thick, and you know, looked quite good between the spines. And then what I did was use a metallic purple paint between the spines so that that really highlighted the shape of the spines in the wing. Then again, I went in with the Boyle's glue and stuck on sequins. I had a number of packets of different sized purple sort of iris oil slick looking sequins, and I used these on all the spines. What I really liked about using the sequins was I felt like they looked a lot like scales, and I used a black glitter between the sequins, so I wasn't filling every single spot with sequins because that would take forever. But you can see I was very generous with the sequins, and I did use a lot of sequins. I wanted the effect that, you know, each of these spines had scales on them that glistened, and having the glitter between it just gave it a really nice finish and a little bit of extra sparkle, and removed the need to really cover every inch with sequins. You could sort of spread them out every so often, and it looked still really good. Now I had some Pearlex as well, and I wanted to add a bit more shine and shading to their wings, so I rubbed that into just the bottom center parts of each of the flaps of skin, and then I went over with the last little bit of latex that I had just to seal it in. Then I did all of the same techniques with the other side of the wings. Now, initially I did try to use elastic for these to attach them, just as I did with my fairy wings, but because of the weight of these, the elastic was too stretchy, and really I needed something that didn't have any stretch to it at all. So this didn't work out. I ended up using these trailer straps. You can get these as well from hardware stores, and they're designed for strapping down cargo and things on cars and trailers, and they can hold a lot of weight, and it's got a little metal clip that you can strap things down with, so they worked out perfectly. You could also potentially use like a belt, 2 belts, one on either side. You need something though, if you're going to make them as thick as mine, you'll probably need something that doesn't have stretch to it, is the main thing. And if you can have something that has a little clip or something at the front, then that's all the more easy to put on. Or other than that, you know, a solid harness that you don't undo is another option, but the elastic just had too much give. I put a little bit of hot glue on it just to tack it in place, but you can see I just sort of wrap it around the harness in a couple of spots, and then I just strapped it around my arm. And these are the finished wings. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you will give these wings a try. Let me know if you do. I'd love to see what you guys come up with. They worked out perfectly for the mythical markets, and as per tradition, I was bumping into everybody with my wings. I really enjoyed using this technique and using the latex because I've never done that before, and I think it gave a really interesting effect to the wings. Thank you guys for visiting Faewood, and I'll see you all next time. Bye guys.